Welcome back to this afternoon session to all of those here and those joining online as well to the Clean Aviation Forum's second part of today. Now, this afternoon's format is a little bit different than we saw this morning. In fact, we're going to have the full call launch event taking place over the next 2.5 hours. You will have the opportunity to ask lots of questions, so I'm sure you will do so. You'll get a general overview as well as the call details. Now, for this part of the event, we have 4 speakers, and I will invite them on stage. And taking over from me for the moderation side for the rest of this afternoon, making my life very easy, is Sébastien Dubois, who will also be handling your questions, whether remote, whether in the room as well. So for those of you joining online, remember, use the chat box, make your questions clear, concise, and indicate to whom they are directed. And of course, do share on social media using on Twitter clean_aviation to make your connections with your colleagues and with other stakeholders. So with that, I'd like to call to the stage the speakers for this session. We have Jane Amilat, who is head of unit at the European Commission. Jane, thank you very much. Ron van Manen is the head of strategic development at the Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking. Ron, thank you. Grab a seat. We also have Sébastien Dubois, head of unit at programs of the Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking. And we have a 4th speaker who's running a little bit late. Again, I'm just going to blame Joe Biden for all of the traffic disruption today. But joining us very shortly will be Bruno Mastantuono, who is the legal manager at the Joint Undertaking. So, Sébastien, you are going to do all the hard work for me this afternoon. So I will leave the floor to you to call up your first speaker to the podium.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and good afternoon, everyone. So my pleasure to introduce this panel with the big call launch event we have all expected to happen, and now it opens up. This morning, it is published on the portal participants. And I propose we start this event with an introduction given by Jane Amilat, who is head of unit at European Commission. Jane?
Can I go there?
Yes, the floor is yours.
Yeah, okay, I can go there. Okay, so yeah, it's my pleasure to be here with you today. Yeah, I think it was quite a successful forum, but also to launch the program, it was that we work together in this ecosystem with clear goals, I think, and we heard from everybody, also from the highest level of the industry, that we share clear goals, and it's very important for me. And this first call is the main achievement that we want to bring forward today, and and it's important that we involve the whole ecosystem in our project so that everybody has a share. I think it was mentioned already yesterday and probably maybe this morning that, of course, I mean, the main aviation R&I program from the EU is Clean Aviation, but we also have under Horizon Europe collaborative research, which we really try not to link also to what we are doing under Clean Aviation. So I think it's also an opportunity to increase the impact, and also for a lot of companies to participate in the program. It was mentioned that now we have quite consequent aviation parts in the Clean Hydrogen Partnership on fuel cells and on tanks. Of course, we have the member states program that you all know better than I do. And I want to mention something here just quickly, that we also have the Innovation Fund. And I know it's not so easy for what we are doing because it's more like technologies and stuff like that. But I think I want to push this. And so I really want, technically it's possible, but it's not so easy because they have specific criteria. So I really want to push this. And I will conclude by saying, because I don't know if it was well mentioned yesterday, and I want to make it clear. I mean, Clean Aviation has clear goals. It's focused, is to get impact, and it's very good like this. But it doesn't mean that we don't look into SAF, so the Sustainable Aviation Fuel. We also have, on the collaborative part, you know probably this Catalyst Fund now with the EIB, where we have a special SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel window. The Innovation Fund is also doing that, so I think it's not that we don't do that. And the last topic that was mentioned, and which we also take very seriously, is this non-CO2 climate impact. There will be a workshop on Monday on this, where we really try not to find solutions, and we know it's a complex issue, but we also work on this. So it's not that we forget these topics because we have clear and focused goals here on clean aviation, And I think now we can go to the call, and yeah, and we are open for all your questions, and I guess you will, all the people working hard on this interview can make a detailed presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeanne, for this nice introduction. Indeed, I did not mention how it's going to work this afternoon. So we are going to give you 3 presentations in a row. One will be given by Ron Van Manen, who is the head of strategic unit within the Clean Aviation, who will present you the overall perspective of the Clean Aviation program. I will continue then to provide you with some practical information, how to prepare the corporate proposals, what are the main rules, the guiding principles, and things to take on board for the preparation of proposals. And then we'll conclude our presentation for what concern all the legal aspects in relation with the preparation of this call. And presentation will be given by Bruno Mastantuono, the head of legal within the Clean Aviation. Then we'll open the floor to questions. We'll have more or less 1 hour and 15 minutes, 1 hour and 20 minutes for questions. We'll pick up questions from the audience, from people connected on remote. And we hope that we'll make that event successful to provide you with clarification as much as we can. I propose we go on with Ron Van Manen to start with the first presentation. Ron?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, what a delight to be here and to see you all here today. I see many familiar faces from our extended family, our ecosystem as created by Clean Sky and Clean Sky 2, and now hopefully going forward into clean aviation. And almost to the day, 2 years ago, all of our models went out the window in terms of doing business, but also conducting our lives with the COVID-19 situation. Pretty much behind us, but new challenges ahead as well. The fact you're here, I think, already shows that that we all want to reconnect, we all want to travel, and that those who have predicted that business travel would no longer exist are being proven wrong, but we're not without our challenges. Then again, I hear from Maria Fernanda that we have almost 1,000 people online, and that to me is the silver lining of the cloud that we've seen. Working in this new mode in terms of hybrid connections means we can extend this session to many more people than otherwise could have fit into this room or would have been able to travel. So I think we can move forward with a new sense of purpose in that sense, realizing, although that, again, after COVID-19 resides, we hope we're not without our challenges. Our thoughts, firstly, foremostly, are, of course, with the people of Ukraine and their families, and we hope this will be put behind us soon. And also our way of living in terms of security, safety, and our way of life can remain as we hope. We see many new members here, coming not only, but especially through the call for expression of interest, which has led to associated members as currently configured in the new joint undertaking that was created on the 30th of November. But also, as I said, many of our, what I call our family in terms of Clean Sky and Clean Sky 2. And to you, I would say in that sense, our journey in configuring the membership is by no means over. There will be a call for expression of interest for further members, which we will make use of once we see what's happening in terms of the first call that opened today. And those of you who also might be looking beyond that in terms of participation, because there will be participation with members as well as others participating, joining forces with the members of the joint undertaking. Our journey has yet to begin. This is where it really starts. A lot has been said already in the past 2 days, and I'll try not to duplicate that. Even in the past 2 years of coming to terms with where to go, why have clean aviation, what to do, how to do it. Sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. You see it here, and it reveals my age. It reveals the dinosaur I am in this industry. When I first got really attracted to aviation, the 747 just entered service about 53 years ago. And I was so keen on flying that when I came to Europe, I managed to get my dad to fly us through London Heathrow to Amsterdam, because that was the only way we could board a 747, because BOAC, now British Airways, were flying it. Just from then to now, 53 years, 747, which we still see flying to today, our unit of production in aviation, energy per revenue passenger kilometer, has improved by almost 80%. Unbelievable. You will not find another sector with that performance. And what I call the dawn of aviation, Chicago Convention, 1948, post-war, 97.5% more or less. Again, astonishing if you look at that. But we've also seen Just look at 1989 to 2019, and I use 2019 because of the onset of Corona, the last normal year, in parentheses, if you like. The aviation system quadrupled. Our emissions doubled. Pretty good. But saying this in the future will no longer cut it. We can't continue to say that we've mitigated the increase in emissions. We're in a new world in terms of going towards 2035 and 2050. And that has reverberated all throughout yesterday and today. And I think that's one of the takeaways that we're very pleased to see. So we know why we're here, and we know where we need to go. I think Clara de la Torre said that clearly as well. We have a situation which is very unfortunate in terms of the Ukraine crisis. We are just coming out of COVID, but the climate emergency remains. It's there. 2021 was the year with the highest ever emissions. Look at the IPCC report. And that coming through COVID is something which should concern us all dramatically. We know where to go. We know it won't be easy. We know there will be setbacks. And the more I think about it with every speaker yesterday, the more Zara Rutherford's words in terms of her journey around the world reverberated with me. She had this wonderful way of speaking, and it really caught my heart in that sense. There are going to be setbacks. We are going to see the odd diversion in our journey. And going towards 2050 in terms of this program and what comes out of this program, the real impact we're looking for. We as a community will fly through areas with reduced visibility. We're going to see the situation in terms of where we want to go will have reduced visibility. Turning to the right, North Korea. Nope. Turning back, not an option. Turning to the left, Japan, not where we want to go. So indeed, we're heading in the same unity of force, but we're going to have to deal with the kind of uncertainties that she so eloquently explained to us yesterday. You've seen this slide. I'm going to return to the numbers because I think they're quite important. Those of you who were here yesterday were, of course, I'm sure, quite interested in what Willie Walsh of IATA and previously IAG and British Airways, by the way, Aer Lingus before that as well, spoke to. Willie chose a chart from ATAG Waypoint 2050. And he chose, I think, prudent management, right? You under-promise and you over-deliver. He chose the prudent base case in Waypoint 2050 in terms of the impact of technology versus the impact of fuels, operations, and he mentioned 13%. The ATAG report, by the way, recommended reading, the ATAG report will tell you, if you look at the scenarios, not one, not two, not three, but 4 different scenarios, that the technology-centric scenario actually points to around 35% of technology benefit versus fuels and others. And I choose this chart because I choose to be an optimist. And if we are not an optimist, if we as a community in terms of the aircraft technology cannot align ourselves with that goal, who will? So if not us, who? And if not now, when? You see that more technology-centric scenario in Waypoint 2050 perfectly aligning with Destination 2050, another recommended reading that I would encourage. And the goals in the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda of Clean Aviation, again, are perfectly aligned with Destination 2050. And we're looking forward to make that happen with you. You saw also, by the way, in Safran's presentation today, the 35 to 40%. So I think we have a very strong consensus in where we want to go. You also saw in different charts, different ways of representing this graphically, from Grazia Vittadini this morning, earlier also from Eric Delbies, and again from Alan Newby, that there is no one solution. There are horses for courses, if you like. No one size fits all. What will work at the level of a small commuter aircraft or general aviation in terms of disruptive technology won't be mature, won't have the ability to scale as quickly, or perhaps ever, in larger aircraft over longer range. And we will also need to adapt the energy systems and the infrastructure. So there's actually a benefit in looking at this and looking at the aviation system with more differentiation. And our call and the SRIA focus very heavily on this. They differentiate between regional aircraft, short and short-medium range aircraft, and the long-term spin-off that I'm sure we'll also see over long-range twin-aisle large aircraft. 2/3 of fuel and over 80% of flights concern sectors of less than 4,000 kilometers. that always surprises people, and I always get people throwing other statistics at me, which, by the way, always end up coming from only looking at Europe, or only looking at Dubai Airport, or only looking at Schiphol Airport. But if you look globally, these are ICCT figures. They're well kite-marked, peer-reviewed. 2/3 under 4,000 kilometers. So all, generally speaking, within what you would cover with regional aircraft and the, let's say, the replacement of the 737, A320, A320neo, A321 generation aircraft. And that percentage is increasing. It's not decreasing. The general trend is towards a higher percentage of flights in that short to medium category. Probably because we're seeing other parts of the world catching up with Europe and North America. So new connections coming in, intra-India, intra-Asia, intra-Latin America. But it's a factor we need to accommodate, and it makes it so sensible to be attacking, and I'll show that in the next slide, the areas in the SRIA and also in the call and the work program that we've announced. And there is this age-old lesson that we can define, we can demonstrate, we can deliver in these areas of aircraft, and then develop onward. So what works at a certain point for a single-aisle aircraft is going to become scalable technology thereafter. I think we can be absolutely certain that we're going to take lessons into the next stage. Let's not forget, by the way, that the industry also has a safety record and trust placed on it implicitly and explicitly, which we have to be totally committed to. And this is also going to drive the speed in which we can take new technology forward and how we allow this to enter into the market, gain learning curve, gain experience before going all out. Marco said it this morning. Set your alarm clock to 2035 when all these aircraft will be there. Well, we're not going to replace 50,000 aircraft in the year 2035, and we're not going to replace every category of aircraft in the same period. The airline industry can't accommodate that. The aircraft manufacturing industry cannot launch every product across the whole gamma over that period. So it works to our benefit to stage this. Our SRIA speaks of 3 thrusts. You heard pillars, they're the same. We like the word thrust. Small anecdote, it sometimes appears as if some of our extended family consider thrust a word which belongs to the propulsion manufacturers. For me, thrust is the nicer word because it's force, it's action, it's direction. And you can use them horizontally or vertically. Doesn't really matter in that sense. But we speak of thrusts, and we have a very focused agenda, as also reminded by Jean-Éric Paquet yesterday in a very impact-oriented, focused program, and making no apologies for it. It's about what we can deliver to the traveling citizen and to the world in terms of being first climate neutrality as a continent, first climate neutral aviation system. We often get this scope question, why? What and how? But consider again, when you look at the previous chart, where the majority of emissions are, but also consider the age of the current fleet, not counting the A320neo, but counting, for instance, the fact that many legacy aircraft are still out there, 737-based, older generation A320-based, and also the phenomenal performance of wide-body aircraft that are now in production. Willie Walsh's example of London Heathrow to Toronto Pearson, 38% less fuel burn for the same payload, A350-1000 versus the 747. There is no low-hanging fruit in what we're doing. And I don't think anybody here can say that what we're going to attempt to do in clean aviation has any low-hanging fruit. But surely the next 20 to 30% step in wide-body, long-range aircraft is the highest fruit on the tree. So we should be aiming at others and making use of the scalability and also the fact that, again, product development is going to need to be staged over a period from the end of clean aviation all the way up into the early 2040s. And we can make the biggest impact by looking at that regional and short-range area in first instance. Aircraft. Well, you see a third here, which is the third thrust, which is about hydrogen. Eric Delbier yesterday, but also Sabine, also Grazia referred to hydrogen. I think every party that has appeared 3 or 4 years ago, if you had mentioned hydrogen in the area of an aircraft manufacturer, you probably would have been escorted to the door. I think we all know now that it is one of the areas that we have no alternative but to investigate. Does that mean we're certain that hydrogen will work within the time frame of clean aviation? No. What it means is and this we know for sure, if we do not investigate that in this decade, then we know for sure that hydrogen is probably a 2075 plus technology, and we simply can't afford to wait. So it needs to happen during the course of this program, and we need answers to the important questions in terms of the viability, the reliability, the implementability, the feasibility, and even things like infrastructure across this big question of hydrogen. John F. Kennedy, the late president from the US, once said, and that was at the inflection point of the space race and his announcement of putting a man on the moon. He once said that, we're not doing this because it's easy. We are doing this because it's hard. And we are doing hydrogen because it's hard. So, again, if not us, who? And I really believe, if we see a commercial airliner flying in the 2030s on a hydrogen-based propulsion system with liquid hydrogen on board, and I believe we will see that, then that is Europe's man on the moon moment. It will be nothing short in terms of accomplishment. I return again, and then I'll close. I return again to Zara's inspiring speech. Her journey was 5 months, but her dream was a decade and a half in the making. You heard her speak as a young child prior to actually having her, let's say, her endeavor develop from the dream and then into a plan and then into reality. Ours will be a few decades, and that's not even counting 1.5 decades of Clean Sky and Clean Sky 2 and all the previous work done under the 5th Framework Program and the 6th Framework Program, the shoulders we stand on, even as a Clean Sky community, the work done under the collaborative research programs of our colleagues from the Commission. We can't consider this done when we reach a gate in terms of TRL. We can't consider it done with a test accomplished. It's done when we've flown around the world, but we'll have to fly around the world one segment at a time. We need the research to get to innovation. We need the innovation to get to a program launch, product development program launch. And we need that launch to get an introduction. We need to convince an airline community, and we'll need to convince the flying community that these are the aircraft that they want to fly in. That's both an environmental footprint, but it's also in terms of the safety and reliability of the system. You heard Axel say that we estimate, that's not rocket science, but we estimate that this journey in terms of the research only, that's not product development, that's not the implementation in the fleet, that's not the infrastructure, but in terms of the research effort, 12 billion over this decade is a pretty good rough estimate of what is needed. And you also saw that clean aviation is roughly 1/3 of that. So we are going to need to work together with not only with the community in terms of private investment, but with the support mechanisms at a regional level, at a national level, and in areas where we can combine forces with CESAR, with clean hydrogen, with the batteries partnership. And there are ongoing discussions underway. And I'm absolutely convinced that we will make 1 + 1 3 in terms of working with these fellow initiatives. Back to Zara. She spoke so eloquently about flying into the unknown, but knowing where she needed to go. We also are flying one segment at a time. Clean aviation itself can be composed of 2 with a stopover. We have a phase 1, we have a phase 2. The landmark call we opened today for 735 million of EU funding, by the way, with roughly, in total, a little over 2 billion in likely overall contribution, because there's going to be this in-kind contribution factor, this contribution, if you like, leverage factor that needs to take place in the program. Will be roughly until 2025, maybe early 26, but early 25 we'll launch phase 2. And what's kind of intriguing, Alan Newby said that earlier, where he spoke about engineers having a T-shaped model. The program has a little bit of a T-shaped model as well, because what we'll do in the first phase will be a little bit broader than, in phase 1, will be a little bit broader than phase 2, looking at the trade studies, looking at where we need to actually penetrate with really deep and aggressive acceleration in phase 2. And we should not think that in phase 2 we need to look at every component, every system, every ATA chapter of the aircraft in terms of taking everything from TRL 2 to TRL 4 to TRL 6 to product development. That's not going to be necessary, and it's also not efficient in terms of resources. We need to pick out those things where we really move the needle in terms of aircraft performance, especially energy performance and climate performance. So our extensive pre-flight planning has been underway for a few years now. And the ambitious journey in terms of first dreaming and then defining clearly has come to fruition. The call is open, and we're calling on all of you to board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron, for this nice and broad introduction about the clean aviation objective ambitions, which follows, in fact, a detailed presentation which were given along that 2 days. I think if I would like to summarize with one word, it's about impact. So we need to be ready to deliver the impact by 2030. And this is what I'm going to try to explain to you, how we can translate this ambition, these ideas, into concrete activities in order to deliver our impact by 2035. I will start first, in fact, with information which have been disclosed, in fact, this morning, which is now available on the Funding and Tenders Opportunities portal. This is the place where all calls from European Commission are made available. So the launch date for this first call is today, 23rd of March. What you can see on this chart is the different dates that will follow until the closure and the grant signature. For your information, what we call the submission system open means all information that will be made available for you to start inserting your proposal. It will take much more time. It's for practical reasons. So you'll be able to submit your proposal as from 25th of April, while you will be able to already anticipate that preparation. The call will close 3 months after, on the 23rd of June. A period to raise questions that require additional clarification on some aspects will be open until the 23rd of May. Our objective is to collect questions through the info mailbox, which is given on this slide, where you can raise any question you may have in relation with the topics, the general objective, the approach. And we'll regularly issue some answers onto our website and on the participant portal as well. In total, we'll issue 2 to 3 question and answers based on the question received. The evaluation phase will start right after the call closure and will start during the period of July-August, with the aim to come out with the list of selected proposals as from September onwards, to be approved by the governing board slightly after, which means more or less by mid-October. And the aim is really to implement the grant and to finalize the grant preparation by mid-December. So it's rather short. It's a rather short period, but this is the only way, the only route, if we want to be able to pre-finance project by the end of this year and to be able to release the pre-financing and to officially start. That tight schedule can only work if proposals are sufficiently detailed in terms of content and in terms of activities. That's why you will see later there is a specific process proposed to implement this. Another important aspect as well is about the process of evaluation, where we'll invite some applicants during summer. First of all, to prepare a set of answers to questions that will be raised by the panel of reviewers. And we'll invite them, in fact, to join for a hearing session, which will take place from the 3rd week of August. In terms of involvement, some of you may ask how to get involved and what are the proposal mechanisms put in place to address this. First of all, through the funding portal participants, you have the opportunities for any of the parties interested to file your profile and to award about your capabilities and your possibilities and to raise your interest about areas of participation. The second important mechanism will be the call info day that will be organized across Europe from now on. The first one will be organized in Turkey from the 31st of March, the second in the Netherlands from 7th of April, and the others in Spain, and more to follow. I invite you to follow the information onto our website because we'll regularly publish and update information about info session day that will take place. Here is the content of this call. So in total, this call is about 13 research topics and 1 support action, which are calling for up to 21 projects for a total of 735 million.72. This is the largest call ever launched in the history of clean aviation and clean sky. All the areas are fully open to competition, and the call is launched and organized by the GU. This topic address the objective of the Strategic Research Innovation Agenda and the objective of the regulation as they are stated. The topics were prepared by the Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking and the European Commission, elaborated from the Strategic Research Innovation Agenda and the different technical roadmaps which have been put in place on the different pillars of trust, as Ron mentioned before. This call aims at maturing the next aircraft concept and the candidate technologies and system and subsystems which are required to meet our high-level goals of the program, which are about reducing the greenhouse gases emission by 30%, exploiting the results by 2035 with new aircraft entering into service, and by replacing the fleet of aircraft in 2050 for more than 75%. Those topics are defined around 3 domains, which are about hydrogen-powered aircraft domain, where we have 4 topics calling up to 7 proposals. The hybrid electric powered regional aircraft domain, where we have 4 topics calling for up to 5 proposals. And the small and short and medium range aircraft domain, where 3 topics are proposed, calling up to 6 proposals. There is a 4th domain, which encompasses the 3 thrusts that will support the maturation of the new aircraft concept and the certification aspects necessary for future exploitation. This transversal area is composed of 2 topics, calling up to 4 proposals. And finally, there is a support action topic for a value of 720,000 euros. Here is the content and the way the topics are described. I will not go through all in details, but I will insist on some specific aspects. The first one is about the expected EU contribution per project. This expected contribution per project is an estimate made by the Clean Aviation GU, which is an indicative funding value per project. We encourage participants to stick to this indicative funding value. This will be a sub-criteria that will be used by the panel of experts during the evaluation. And to build a consistent portfolio of projects addressing the ambition of the call, the high-level objectives, and the target of the strategic research innovation agenda, the requested funding of proposal may be subject to adjustments if proposed by the experts during the evaluation. This could be required in case synergies across projects are identified and deemed relevant in order to link certain activities, or to limit the funding request when this one is not deemed necessary by the panel of experts. The objective will be again to build a consistent project portfolio of projects with the funding available in this call. Another important aspect is the indicative duration per project. If we want to be able to deliver our objective by 2030 and to launch the phase 2 and the Big Bang by 2026, and to be on time and to deliver and to launch the new generation of aircraft with the right technologies, we need to make sure that we are capable to deliver and to achieve TRL 6 by 2026, 2027, which means that the duration of projects in this first phase is about 36 months, with the exception of the transverse area, where the proposed duration is 48 months. For sure, this is an indicative duration, but in any case, it can exceed by more than 12 months the proposed duration which is given in each topic. I invite applicants to refer to the master plan, in fact, of each of the thrust or the pillar, as given in the work program, to build a consistent project planning and to align their proposals consistently with the ambition as it is defined in each of the relevant thrusts. Another important aspect is the maturity. The maturity in each topic is identified sometimes at the start, what is required to start the project, but in all the cases at the end. Each of the topics call for a maturity 4 or higher, depending on the topics. Applicants must provide a clear elaboration of their TRL steps and the roadmap aligned with the Strategic Research Innovation Agenda and with the objective as defined in the work program that can deliver the technology maturity needed by the end of the Clean Aviation for the results of their project to be included in a new aircraft which will enter into service by 2035. And the last but not the least is the performance targets. These are about the performances and indicators which will be defined by the applicant based on elements which are requested in the topics. And the applicant shall determine the above target at system, subsystem, down to component level, broken down in a consistent manner from the aircraft requirements in order to evidence the proper alignment with the high-level objectives. This target shall be accompanied by a strategic development plan, including performance improvements for critical components covering the time period until 2030. In terms of skill and capabilities, this was one of the questions raised this morning to the last panel. And all the necessary expertise, as defined in the topic description, which are deemed appropriate to achieve the objective of the call and future exploitation of results, in relation with the necessary impact, has to be brought in the proposal. It should include all the additional expertise which are needed to complement the traditional aeronautical domain in order to effectively address the incorporation of new disruptive technologies and to mitigate as well difficulties that may arise during the project implementation. What does it mean? It means that when the call describes a certain level of ambition, we need to make sure that all consortia will have the necessary skills and capabilities to address in full in case some technical difficulties arise, to find the right mitigation path to maintain the objective at stake at the end of the project. Another important aspect, it calls for inclusion of SMEs and newcomers. Where appropriate, the consortium should include newcomers to the field of aeronautics, and in particular, SMEs, startups, and our knowledge centers that can bring disruptive innovation to the project as proposed. The necessary expertise to run and manage large consortia and to exploit results will be as well a key parameter to assess the consortia potential and capabilities. These aspects will be detailed in the annexes of the proposals, where participants will clearly expose the way they will bring the necessary expertise to meet the topic objectives, how to meet the necessary impact, both in terms of performance and exploitation potential. For example, industrial capabilities of the different participants to bring into a tier 1 or tier 2 organization is also an essential item to make sure that exploitation paths can be ensured, and the capability of the consortia as well to work as a whole. Just maybe a small caveat that the participation of SMEs and the geographical spread is one of the items that can be used in case of equal score for proposals to discriminate them. Another important item is about how to build an integrated approach through that 14 topics which are proposed. The topics are interrelated and proposed in a way they all directly contribute to the overall expected impact of the program. The Gantt chart of the different thrusts is given in the work program, as I mentioned before. On example, this one. On the left-hand side, what you can see is the Gantt chart of the short-medium range as it is presented in the work program. And this is a way, in fact, to prepare this integrated approach. One of our challenges is to align all projects together from a planning perspective first, from a content perspective, and to define the interfaces and the nature of milestones and deliverables. And from an IP perspective as well, a collaboration agreement is to be put in place. More explanation will be given later by my colleague Bruno Mastantuono. That's why the following elements are requested for each of the topics, which is about indicate the topics contributing to your project among the list of topics which are given in this call. In other words, we need to be able to understand which topics will contribute to your project, define the interfaces and the interdependencies across the different topics with your project, and align the program planning and the detailed interfaces, which have to be ready at month 6 once the project started in order to build an integrated approach. Something goes wrong, I'm sorry. Concerning the project and impact monitoring, which is also an important item, this slide highlights the way project and impact will be monitored all along the implementation of project. As you have heard along the last 2 days, Clean Aviation aims at delivering impact, as I said it to you in my introduction. It means that this deserves a specific monitoring approach to be deployed in each project from the onset, with the aim to maintain at stake the expected impact and to adjust where necessary the works to be done. On one hand, in fact, projects dealing with hybrid electric regional and short-medium range aircraft concepts, which will be selected out of the transversal area topic number 1, will define and mature the candidate aircraft concepts with inclusion of results from the other contributing projects. They will aggregate the different results stemming from this project and will issue on a yearly biannual basis reports providing results and progress against the aircraft performance indicators defined in the proposal. The same will happen at project end. Conversely, the different contributing projects will provide the necessary information to allow the aircraft concept owners to carry out the performance assessment. The data to be exchanged will be about the performance indicators defined in each project and necessary to assess the monitoring of the performance. This approach deserves a specific agreement in place at consortial level to make this happen from the onset. Parallel to this, the monitoring of projects will be regularly assessed by individual consortia and by the GU to monitor the progress as defined in the project objectives against the high-level objectives. Consortia are requested to agree on performance monitoring strategy right from the beginning to steer their project with the aim to maintain a continuous alignment towards the expected impact and to deliver the technology maturity which is needed for inclusion of results in a new aircraft. This approach will have to be detailed in each proposal and will be assessed during the evaluation under the impact criteria. Another important element, as reminded by Ron in the introduction, is about the in-kind contribution to project. Declaring an in-kind contribution amounting to 1.5 times the funding of the Clean Aviation Program is an obligation set in a regulation to members. Members will have to include in their proposal a description of the contributing activities that will complement the project content as part of their obligation. The contribution will correspond to at least 1.5 times the project funding request, and this will be composed of two parts, what we call the ICOP, in-kind to operations, and the IKA, in-kind to additional activities. A description of the in-kind to additional activities planned to contribute to the projects will have to be included in the proposal with clear identification of their contribution to project objectives. The proposal template that will be made available as part of the call package to all applicants in the coming days will provide you with guidelines. This approach is a key element to support as well the development of synergies, the present one and the future to come, in connection with projects at EU, national and regional level. An important caveat is that non-members willing to become members as part of the call for expression of interest to be launched next year will have to mention this in their proposal in order their proposed additional activities can be considered during the evaluation as part of the overall contribution. The ability to ensure an adequate level of in-kind contribution to the Clean Aviation Program, as defined in the call topic, is a part which will be assessed during through the implementation criteria. Now, this is about the application form. The application form is not yet available on our website. It will be made available soon with another set of information, probably end of this week, early next week. The application form is composed of two main parts, what we call the Part A, which is about the administrative information, about the proposals and the participants, and the Part B, which is the core of the proposal. That Part B will be limited to 120 pages, which is already quite significant, and will be complemented by annexes to this Part B in order to detail, first of all the necessary elements in relation with financial figures, effort cost, and budget breakdown, but also about applicant capabilities in order to assess the skill and the capability of the consortium. The application will be submitted through the Funding and Tenders Opportunity Portal, where information related to this call is available. It needs to be prepared in advance, and that's why, in fact, disregarding the fact that the submission system is not yet open, the template being made available will not prevent anyone to start actively the preparation, and all information will have to be prepared in advance in order to be submitted when the submission system is open. In terms of rules for submission, this is part of the rules which are made available on the set of documents which are included in this call. The proposal will be evaluated against three criteria, which are excellence, impact, and implementation, which different sub-criteria which are specific to the Clean Aviation Program. They are all indicated in the work program. The evaluation will be run along 3 steps and potentially 4. First of all, each proposal will be evaluated by individual experts at the level of each expert, and will then be their view will be then exchanged during what we call a consensus meeting that will potentially be complemented by hearing sessions. Hearings might be organized, as I said before, to get clarification where required, to assess whether link and synergies with other projects are to be encouraged where necessary, and to potentially ensure complementary across proposed actions, and to assess as well the funding request. Once this is being done, we'll have a ranking list which will have to be established at topic level. Then each proposals belonging to the same topic will be compared and harmonized with the identification of potential synergies. The proposal will then be ranked for a given topic. Bear in mind that the impact is a criteria that will be weighted, in fact, 1.5 as compared to the others. And as I said before, in case of equal score, the following aspects will be considered. Impact first, SMEs, newcomers, and geographical diversity second, and gender balance third. Call ranking will be then established on the criteria set in case of, Call ranking list will then be established using the criteria as defined in the work program. This can be complemented by a 4th stage, which will be in case it's been needed to ensure a consistent project portfolio, ensuring the alignment with the 3R objectives, and then all proposals before finalizing the ranking list, in case it's being necessary, will be compared at each other. On this chart, no need to be detailed, but it's just to give you a flavor about the nature of documents that will be part of the call. So far, we have 3 documents which are currently made available: the topic description, the work program, and the rule for submission. There is another one as well, which is the strategic research and innovation agenda. And then soon will be issued the model template for proposals, including, in fact, the description of work package and budget, the evaluation forms that will be used as well, and the model and model consortium agreements and model cooperation agreements, plus the other templates. This concludes my presentation. I propose to stop here and to invite my colleague, Bruno Mastantuono, to continue with his presentation for what concerns the legal aspects. Thank you.
Move the slides in front of me?
Your slides are normally uploaded, and you can use the pointer in this.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to be with you today. I recognize a lot of familiar faces. So pleasure really to give a presentation today. I'll try to keep it very short, because a lot has already been said by my colleagues. And I think it's good to keep also a bit of dimension of workshop here. So I'll try to make as much space available for questions, okay? So moving to the technical issue. Yeah, okay, very good. So I think before we go into the description of the call and the different legal aspects, it's really important to provide you a little bit of a snapshot of what is the regulatory framework of Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking. You know, this is a new generation of joint undertaking. Our legal basis was adopted only end of November of last year. So we are now in the process of implementing also a new legal framework, getting used to that. But as you have seen, we put a lot of priorities in launching the technical program as soon as possible. So according to the new legal basis, as you know, we have a different membership structure. Right now, we have 27 founding members. These are the pioneer stakeholders of Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking. They have been directly added to the regulation of clean aviation following a very productive 2 years of intense preparation. Following that, we have already created the condition from a regulatory point of view to enlarge the membership of Clean Aviation from day one. And this is how we already have 12 additional members, associated members, who joined the Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking already on the 16th of December. So at the moment, as you know, we already have quite a widespread membership from the private side, which of course comprising not only a very strong industrial dimension, but also a very important participation of RTOs, universities. We have, I would say, a very big representation of all the aeronautics ecosystem and also going beyond the pure aeronautics ecosystem. In terms of governance, a couple just of information to tell you how we operate. We have a governing board. This is very much in continuity with Clean Sky 1 and Clean Sky 2. And we have 15 representatives only of the private members who are sitting on the governing board. So this is a change in respect to Clean Sky 2. We have a limited number of participants in the governing boards. The governing board members are called to represent basically the full aeronautics system and supply chain. And of course, they also represent internally the different subdomains which are basically comprising the aeronautic system. We also have a new governance body, which is the technical committee. This is also something new. This is a governance committee which is composed by all the representatives of the members. So each member has got a representative in the technical committee, which plays a very important role in terms of basically developing the strategy, the technology road mapping of the program, and also in providing a number of inputs in terms of priorities to be considered for our work program and future goals. In terms of main rights and obligations, we always get these questions still across the launch of Clean Aviation. Should I become a member or should I not become a member? I can say that in terms of rights of obligation, we have a very balanced governance. We have a very balanced regulatory framework. As you know, members are collectively called by the regulation to ensure a minimum total of 2.4 in-kind contribution, 2.4 billion, to be brought by the end of the program. This is a tremendous collective commitment that all members have taken collectively. And we are very glad to have reached already that important target, at least in terms of ambition. And also, they contribute 50% to the payment of the administrative budget of the Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking, which is already the case now in Clean Aviation Joint, in Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking. So moving next to the more practical aspects. As a joint undertaking, we may use different instruments in order to support research and innovation. The first type of instrument that we are going to use is, as you heard today, is the open calls for proposals. The main principles that we have to follow when designing the call for proposals is basically to keep it open, to design calls to be open and competitive, and 100% of the funding will be placed only via open and competitive calls. So this is a major difference in comparison to Clean Sky 2. There is no pre-allocated budget to certain typology of participants. All the funding of Clean Aviation will go via open and competitive calls. The second instrument that we may use is the call for expression of interest to recruit additional associated members. You know that we already made use of a call for expression of interest that was launched by the European Commission as part of the preparatory process of the Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking, which led to the selection of additional 12 associated members. But we are also foreseen in our work program to launch a call for expression of interest led by the joint undertaking, and this will happen most likely in the first quarter of 2023. So those stakeholders that are interested to play a very important, significant role in the program, they are ready to take a long-term commitment. They have capabilities, and not only ambition, but capabilities and financial means to commit on the long term. This is going to be a very important opportunity to become part of the membership of Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking. In terms of open calls framework and applicable rules, first of all, our calls and topics are basically designed in compliance with Horizon Europe rules for participation. So we basically follow the same principle and the rules that are included into the Horizon Europe rules for participation with minor deviations. For the rest, I think we have done a very interesting topics design with this first call, because we have been really designing the topics in order to meet the objectives of the program, in order to meet the objectives that are directly set under our regulation, and also directly looking at direct contribution to the SRIA. So we have done a lot of design together with Sebastian and Ron in organizing this call. And you also receive these when reading the call. You see a number of specific conditions that have been added to the call, simply to reflect the fact that this is a program. It's an integrated program which is called by the European Union legislator, by member states, to deliver tangible results. This is why we have put a lot of energy and also enthusiasm in designing this call in order to aim at impact, concrete results. In terms of specificity that we have in our regulation, we have a derogation in our Single Basic Act, which allows some minor deviation on the eligibility conditions, but I will get back to point in the next slide. And also we have basically admissibility, eligibility, award criteria and condition. They are all set out very clearly in the work program. So I really invite you to take a look at the work program, in particular at the chapter which is called Conditions and Management of the Rules, because it is under this section that you will find a description of the evaluation criteria, you will find the rules on eligibility, you will find the rules on admissibility, and you will find also any specific additional condition which applies to this call. Sebastian has already mentioned another important document, the rules for submission, evaluation, selection, and review procedure. This is a very important document because this is explaining the different steps that Sebastian has explained a couple of minutes ago on how the evaluation will be performed entirely with independent external experts, but also how we will basically drawing up the final ranking of projects to be proposed for approval by the governing board. As Sebastian said, taking into due consideration the need to achieve a consistent project portfolio in order to select the best 21 projects in terms of ambition and tangible capabilities to aim at impact. Finally, on specific conditions, as I said before, this topic is a bit, I would say, special in itself, because we have included a number of specific conditions. Again, always bearing in mind the overall interest of the program, which is impact. In terms of, I'm going too fast. In terms of admissibility, proposals, as you know, have to be submitted necessarily via the Commission funding and tender portal. You need to comply with all the condition and management conditions that are indicated into the work program. And as you heard from Sebastian, we have increased the page limit, which is normally 70 pages. This has been increased to a maximum number of 120, simply to reflect the fact that these are going to be very large projects with a very significant budget and potentially EU funding allocated to that. In terms of eligibility conditions, here we follow the Horizon Europe rules. So in order for your consortia to be eligible under our call, you will need at least one independent legal entity established in a member state of the Union and 2 other independent legal entities established in a different member state of the Union or in a country which is associated to Horizon Europe. We have also included into the work program coordination and support action. Here, the rule in terms of eligibility is that only the participation of one legal entity or more legal entities is required in terms of eligibility. And in terms of derogation, as you know, we may in principle derogate to these rules and allow also single entity to apply to our calls, or also to have consortia which are not meeting the condition that I just mentioned. But we have decided that this derogation will not be necessary in the first call, because the intention with the first call is really to select very important large projects that are going really to set the basis for the phase 1. So it is really important that we are managing to attract a very, I would say, diversified consortia, meeting all the necessary capabilities and expertise. So this derogation, again, will not be applicable to the first call. In terms of composition of the consortia, looking at the open calls framework, we always get this question. As you know, this call is open to members, but of course also to non-members. So it's a fully open and competitive call. Consortia may be composed both by members and non-members. So we are very much encouraging this mingling in the consortia configuration of members together with other entities that are interested to play a major role into the program. And the same will be reflected also in terms of contracting, in terms also grant agreement. As you know, in Clean Sky 2, we had separate grant agreements for members and for partners. This is not the case anymore. This is a big difference. In Clean Aviation, members and non-members will be all participating into the same grant agreements. And believe me, there are also a number of implications out of that for us in terms of internal processes. But I think this is an important information that I wanted to share with you. Then moving to the next slide, I'll try again to be very quick. Associated countries to Horizon Europe. Here as well, we get a lot of questions about what is the current status of associated countries. Here you go. This is a clear snapshot of the situation as it stands. As you know, there are a number of association agreements that have already been signed by a number of countries that are already legally applicable. So you see these are listed on the left side of this slide. On the right side, there is a list of countries which are expected to sign up an association agreement. So this is a list which is still in draft. This is a list on which we cannot really make any speculation on when the association agreement will be signed and will officially enter into force. What I can tell you is that we follow entirely the Commission guidance and approach here. For the sake of the first call, we will be treating countries and the entities established into this country as if they were already part of a country associated to Horizon Europe. This is really to encourage and to be optimistic that this country will finally sign up the association agreement. We, of course, are getting very often this question, in particular with regard to the UK, which is a strong aeronautics country. So what I can tell you now is that if we get applications from the UK legal entities, yes, they will be eligible to apply. Yes, they will be eligible to participate. Yes, today they have to be treated as eligible as well to be funded by the joint undertaking. But the final eligibility for funding will have to be subject to the signature of an association agreement by the time we will be signing up the grant agreement. So in a way, it looks like we are kind of postponing the issue. But I think here there is not much we can speculate. This is the current approach followed in Horizon Europe. So again, at the moment, UK entities are eligible to apply. They can be part of consortia, they can be part of your proposals, and they have to be allocated a budget. But again, decision on whether they will be funded or not, for that we will have to wait basically when the grant preparation stage will start. And as you have heard, then we will have basically to wait, and we have some time until September. So I would say that for now, this should not be a huge disruption, because we still have a few months to go in terms of closure of the call, evaluation process, communication of the results to the selected consortia, and only then there will be specific guidance that will be given by us to the consortia during the grant preparation. So this is an important piece of guidance that I wanted to give you. Some specificity in terms of contractual provisions. Yes, we very much needed to highlight these points, because we have now in Horizon Europe a model grant agreement, which is a general one. It's a corporate grant agreement applying to all instruments of the MFF, but we have a specific annex, which is basically detailing specific rules applying only to the joint undertakings established under the Single Basic Act. So first of all the projects have to contribute to the SRIA and to the clean aviation objectives. This is a landmark news. This is very important. This is very much in line with the construction of our call. It is also very important that from a contractual point of view, you must always be, I would say, in place to demonstrate that your project is contributing to the SRIA. It's very important that we do not accept deviations there, that you can always be asked to show that there are concrete contribution in terms of high-level goals of the SRIA. There is also another important dimension. As JU, we have the right to object to any potential request to transfer ownership of results or exclusive licensing of results generated in clean aviation projects, because we may have to assess whether there is an impact in terms of European competitiveness. So in case you may need necessary to transfer results, of course, this is something that we will have to discuss, but be aware that transfer of ownership of IP generated out of European funding will have to be subject to a specific prior approval request. And this also has been extended up to 10 years after the end of the action. This is something that we have agreed with the Commission, really in terms of looking at clean aviation as a major program, also in terms of boosting European competitiveness in the aeronautics sector. There is also a new beneficiary obligation on exploitation. As you know, all consortia have to exploit. In the new grant agreement, the rule is that now the exploitation obligation have been moved up to 10 years after the end of the project. This is also something new, because the normal rule is 4 years. In aeronautics, as you know, we have long life cycles in terms of developing, maturing and integrated technology. So the exploitation obligation now will continue after the end of the project and up to 10 years. Also, as you heard from our colleagues, we are also experimenting a new specific clause in our call, which is the in-kind contribution. So in-kind contribution, as Sebastian has already explained, is basically a concrete instrument that will allow, in particular, the members to execute on their collective commitment on the 2.4. We are asking all the applicants basically to describe in their proposals how they are going to contribute and how they are going to meet the 1.5 ratio in terms of in-kind contribution. And as Sebastian explained, we know this is a member's obligation, but in order to keep a level playing field to everyone, in order not to discriminate, basically we will ask also those applicants which are not members to explain the level of resources that they may bring into the program. Finally, as you know, this specific in-kind contribution has been set at project level, and this is a condition that will apply across all the different topics. Before I close, I think a final reminder to take specifically a look again at the work program or the call and management chapter, to the rules for submission and selection. And as I said before, we are also producing additional documents. In particular, there is a model consortium agreement. We are finalizing these days together with our colleagues from the private side. This is also important because this is to allow you to speed up things. There will be already a model consortia agreement to allow you to have internal arrangement in your consortia. We have been to do some legal design there as well, because we are a program. But this model will be available on the participant portal in the coming days. Final word on the cooperation agreement. Sebastian has already indicated how important it is to follow a programmatic approach in our program, how important it is going to be to integrate results coming up from different projects. We are going to do this through a framework. This framework is going to be called cooperation agreements. This is a framework that will allow consortia to exchange data and allow access rights to background the results as needed for the proper execution of the program, and in order, again, to look at the downstream exploitation dimension of the program. So you will also see a model will be published on the funding portal in the coming days. And again, you will have a set of documents in order to design your consortia in the most efficient and impactful manner. I will stop here, and of course, I remain at your disposal for any burning question you may have. Thank you very much.
We can leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bruno, for these explanations. We already have received, in fact, several questions from the audience online. So what I'm going to do is simply to remind the two which have already been addressed by Bruno, and then I will open the floor as well to questions here in the room. One was about, will the evaluation be organized in an open and independent manner, or will the members and associated members be automatically selected? It has been mentioned that there are no privileges. This is a call which is fully open to competition, to any parties who is willing to apply. Members and associated members have a certain level of obligations which arise from the Single Basic Act, but it does not necessarily mean that they are going to be selected. They are the major contributors, but they need to go through this independent evaluation process. Any further comments or additional clarification? Otherwise, I continue. Fine with you? The second one is about the UK entity, was mentioned by Bruno, but might be complemented by Jeanne, if you wish. Can a consortia consist of UK entity apply, and will the UK entity be eligible for funding?
Okay, so this, yeah, I would like maybe to clarify a little bit, because I think it's maybe not so easy. I mean, as it was mentioned in the presentation from Bruno, UK is not yet associated to Horizon Europe. I don't want to speculate, because that's not my role here, about what will happen. But what we will do is that we will check on the end of December, when we sign the grant agreement, whether UK is associated or not. And if it is not associated, the UK entities in the consortium will be able to participate but not receive funding. Yeah? So they will have or to have their own private funding, or to receive, because you know that the UK government has been setting up like a fund, or receive directly the money from the fund. So that's scenario number one. Scenario number two, if the UK is associated, the UK entities will be able to receive funding from Clean Aviation, and also what we hope, because if the UK gets associated, that the budget also of Clean Aviation will increase. So that's also, but okay, it's not for this call, but I think the idea, and as was mentioned already, UK companies are very strong in the aviation sector, so that will be the assumption.
Thank you very much, Jeanne. I propose to go along, in fact, the question. We have more or less 120 minutes still to address all questions. So I still have 9 on that list, and then I will open the floor to questions in the audience here, in case they have not yet been addressed. One of the questions is about, will a consortium agreement be required with submission of a proposal? You can use your mic.
We have a mic, yes. Yes, we apply the same rules as Horizon Europe. Before we sign grant agreement with the consortia, we need to have a proof that a consortium agreement is in place. This is why we are publishing a model as soon as possible, because it's very important. It's really important, even more in this program, that all the participants have a clear understanding on roles, contributions, and also responsibilities from a technical and financial point of view.
Clear. Thank you very much. There are a lot of questions about how to participate, to be involved, especially for SMEs, RTOs. It has been mentioned that it is an important sub-criteria that will be used to assess the impact in case of equal proposals. So the question is that what is currently planned to get all parties connected to join and participate? Maybe Ron, you want to say a few words on this?
That's a tough question. That's a challenging question. Thank you for that one. I think we need to be cautious in terms of using the term all participating. It is an impact-driven and impact-oriented program. At the same time, and these conversations have been, I would say, lively and at times even quite challenging among the community that has now formed the membership of the joint undertaking. That impact focus means that we expect everyone preparing a proposal to look at the capabilities required to bring the level of disruption that is needed. And I think you heard a very eloquent statement also from Tina Tomasic of Pipistrel yesterday in that sense that we expect this to be the case. Of course, the evaluation will look carefully at all participants in all consortia in terms of meeting the level of performance that is expected, aligning with the SRIA. And in some cases, even the evaluation criteria will descend, will include looking at, for instance, the level of newcomers, startups, or SMEs. We don't have numerical targets. We don't foresee numerical targets. We think that is in the interest of consortia to develop their own rationale, and it will not be the same for each area, each system, each type of aircraft, perhaps. And so we leave this in the hands of the community, which you all represent. But there is, of course, an industry fabric. There's a supply chain that consists in terms of bringing aircraft to market. And let's face it, notwithstanding the wonderful question we always get about the next Tesla of the skies coming from Europe, this fabric of the aviation industry is we're going to need to rely on it in terms of actually having real impact, having certified products, having products available for airlines to order and to enter into service, including product support, including et cetera, et cetera. So largely speaking, the disruption, I think, is also something like Intel Inside in your computer. We expect this to be part of consortia, and we warmly encourage the members to take this into consideration.
I agree, and to complement what you have said, indeed this is part of the evaluation criteria to be used as a sub-criteria in case of equal proposals, the participation of SMEs, the geographical diversity. But this is also an important element to include all necessary level of disruption, and we know that in certain fields, hydrogen especially, but not only, we expect for radical disruption in that field. And so we know that there are disruptors which are currently small entities, and so their participation, we expect to be included in some of the proposals. Another question is about will there be any brokerage event organized to allow participants to introduce themselves and to organize B2B meeting? So far, what we have planned, and this will be made available on our website, there will be call-info sessions organized across Europe at the initiative of the member states. The first one will be organized in Turkey on the 31st of March, followed by others in the Netherlands, in Spain. We expect the SRG members as well to organize B2B meetings. This is something we are discussing with them. And we are trying to liaise with members as well to join and participate in order to encourage discussion, exchanges, and potential inclusion of parties who have nice capabilities to bring to the different consortia. The next question is concern the EU funding which will be implemented at project level. Will it be 40% of the total spending? So to make a long story short, Horizon Europe is not as different, is not different as compared to Horizon 20 from that perspective. The funding rate is the same, 70% for private entities, small entities, and 100% for public organization. And the same will apply to Horizon Europe and to Clean Aviation. Is there any of you willing to complement?
I think, well, maybe just a small compliment in that sense. Formally speaking, I think we need to protect the fact that the work program defines the funding rates we will use. But I fully agree with you. These are the rates that we have concluded and have agreed with the members and with the Commission for this work program period. And we don't really foresee that would change dramatically as currently viewed. We're following the line of innovation actions, but that's justified because we're looking at a program which should bring relatively high TRL and relatively integrated solutions.
It's true that this is well defined in the work program for the call 1. It may have evolutions in the future on call 2 and call 3, but so far this is not in scope for this first call. Another question relates to the in-kind contribution expected, and I will direct this one to you, Ron. The Clean Aviation total program funding is set to 4.1 billion euros, of which 1.7 billion euros coming from the public side. We expect more than 2.1 billion euros to complement that amount. And the question is, how will this private funding be brought into the program? How will this complementary funding be introduced and added to the program?
Yeah, I think first it's good to have a common understanding in what comprises in-kind contribution or contributions and the leverage factor that we are speaking of, and that the legislator, in terms of agreeing the council regulation, had in mind in this expectation. And we park for the moment the fact that there is also, but a very minor, a cash contribution. There is a joint undertaking with a so-called administrative cost. This is roughly 2.3%. The lights need to go on. We need to heat the building. We need IT to work, and we appreciate the salaries being paid as well. But that's the part which is not part of in-kind contributions. The in-kind contributions, without trying to be too technical in terms of terms, are formed in terms of the element that is not funded in your total eligible cost. Because if we use 70% of total eligible cost, that means that the other 30%, give or take, taking also the top up for the indirect, is not funded. And this forms the so-called ICOP, or in-kind from operational areas. It's a slightly different definition to what was used under Clean Sky 2. Those of you who were involved as member in Clean Sky 2 may have, let's say, a recollection of ICOP versus IKAA, and these have shifted. But what is important to realize is that in the delta between total cost, every company has a total cost, including all of the overheads versus the total eligible cost, there is another area, and that area can be counted towards the so-called additional activities. And other additional activities can be those areas which you have invested in privately or invested in the course of other programs, innovation programs, such as national programs or regional programs. And again, a specificity in the clean aviation part of the so-called Single Basic Act is that, for instance, in a national program in Europe, if you are involved there, both the national contribution and the private contribution can be counted towards this additional activity. And we know, and I think you all are aware, if you are involved in programs, for instance in LUFO in Germany, for instance in CORAC in France, and there's a very large UK program, but the UK is a very specific situation, as we know, in that sense, that there is a lot going on, and we expect for that, in that sense, there also to be a lot of opportunity to bring these leverage factors. Now, the other thing, of course, but that's the next question, which I'm sure Sebastian will raise, is how we align these things to create real synergies. But I'll stop there.
This is the next question, correct. So indeed, and just to complement what you have said, the in-kind contribution will be assessed under the criteria implementation. There will be a specific format which will be proposed in the proposal template in order to describe for each of the members and non-members willing to become a member what is the contribution they intend to bring into the program in order to make match with the 1.5 funding ratio, which is expected with regard to the funding. And this will be included as being part of the proposal. Indeed, the next question, which is really in conjunction with the notion of in-kind contribution, but which is a little bit of a different nature, is about the synergies. Synergies with other EU partnership and programs, and national and regional. So the question is how these synergies could support the high-level objective of the Clean Aviation Program, and how are such synergies be encouraged in Call 1?
Maybe I can start. I think, as I mentioned already in my introduction, we have specific topics under aviation on the clean hydrogen partnership. So this is a concrete synergy. We are also looking at CESAR, and of course, I think it would be good if in your proposal you also mention what you are doing also with national programs or other sites. So I think that's the way probably we will assess the synergies with the two ways: you to propose or to show us, and we also try to push through all the instruments we have at EU and national level.
Yeah, if I may build on Jane's points, all of them important, I think, in that sense. We've heard good examples already yesterday and today. One relatively recent in the final part of this morning from Martin Metscher of MTU, who referred to a Dornier 228 with a fuel cell. It's these things that I think we hope that are brought, let's say, with with a sense of enthusiasm to the program in terms of how we can build and we can go beyond what is already being done underway, and we can align. The aligning is always the difficult part, because we need, like the Gantt chart that was expressed by Sébastien, and that Gantt chart only refers to the internal activity in clean aviation. And we have to kind of unfold that Gantt chart to see where the other elements are coming in through clean hydrogen, or through a program related to fuel cells under LUFO, or even under the hydrogen program in Germany. Similar activities in France in that sense. Clean hydrogen has 2 topics in the current work program and call open, one concerning fuel cell, the other concerning tank storage. Yeah. And there as well. So I think there's a clear opportunity.
And again, for what concerns synergies, this is part of one of the sub-criteria in the impact section. And again, we have proposed a format to develop and describe the synergies, the one which are existing already, because we know that some activities, like mentioned by Ron and Jane, in the clean hydrogen are expected in the LUFO program, in the CORAC, on the ATI. So this has to be included in order to better understand the connection, and also to identify which further synergies are to be implemented, with the aim for us and for the technical committee as well to be able to further prepare the strategy, to update their roadmap, and to anticipate the potential link with other EU initiatives. And this is something which is quite important if you want to further develop this integrated approach.
And maybe to even, again, on that, our state's representative group, there was one, of course, in Clean Sky 2 and one in Clean Sky 1, but it has a number of responsibilities that are also clearly linked to developing a dialogue with the joint undertaking and to establish a means of extracting and leveraging these synergies. On top of that, what we have described in our work program is that we will do a kind of a call for expression of interest, but not one for members, but one in which the member states and regional authorities can also express their desire to enter into a dialogue in terms of aligning program initiatives with the joint undertaking, and establish a means of a round-table approach in terms of looking at how the programmatic effects can be brought into line in terms of timing, specification, outputs, and not trivial transfer of results, because that's also something all of us are acutely interested in. What do you do with results, and how do you make them available?
Thank you, Ron and Jane. The next question is for you, Bruno. Can the proposal be submitted by a single applicant?
So the answer is no for this first call. As I said before, we have a derogation allowing us to consider that specifically on some topics, but we are not making use of this derogation for the first call.
Concerning as well in-kind contribution, again, there is another question, which is about who is to declare the in-kind contribution. Are all the non-profit legal entities, like universities, have such an obligation?
Yes, absolutely. Should I take the question? Yes, I jumped on the question. It reminds me a lot of discussion on the membership agreement. Yes, indeed, there is no derogation in the regulation forbidding, limiting the potential for non-profit to bring in kind. So as we know, universities and non-profit that will apply and participate to project, we know very well they will be funded 100%, up to 100%. So this is automatically eliminating the opportunity for them to bring what we call ICOP into the projects, because the new definition of ICOP in the regulation is total eligible costs minus grant amount. We are aware about that. This is why, together with the Commission, we have created a framework still allowing non-profit to bring additional activities. And those additional activities, in addition to what Ron and Sebastian said, the national programs, regional programs, private funded research, they may also consist of activities that are performed under the program, under the project, but are not funded under the grant. So we are also creating there the possibility for non-profit still to bring into the in-kind basket, what we had in Clean Sky 2 as total project cost, for instance. So this is really a specificity we have created in Clean Aviation in order to allow no differentiation between members. This is very important because we would really like to see all the members bringing in kind, really taking an ambition to the project in terms of leveraging investments. So again, the confirmation is there. Also, non-profit can use the flexibility allowed under the regulation to bring additional activities, which is very diversified in its scope and definition. And again, it allows also to bring activities not funded under the grants, in the notion of in-kind contribution to additional activities. Of course, these are costs and activities that will have to be identified and certified, but this is nothing new. We have already been working on that in Clean Sky 1 and Clean Sky 2.
Another question is in relation with the rules for submission and about the criteria. Will all evaluation criteria, excellence, impact, and implementation, have equal weight? I can just remind what I've explained. They don't all have equal weight because all research topics are labeled AA, innovative action, and as such, the impact will be weighted with a factor of 1.5 as compared to the other factors, excellence and implementation. So no, they don't all have the same weight. And maybe important to remind, in case of equal score for proposals, we'll use discriminating factors. The first one will be impact. So two proposals having received the same score will be discriminated first based on the impact score they received. The second will be about new participants and SMEs and geographical diversity, which will be the second criteria. And the third one will be about gender balance. The next question is about clarification about, can you please clarify a 10-year exploitation after project closure?
Sure. Sure. Exploitation is something that will not stop when the real project will be finished, as we know. So the exploitation plan, which is part of your proposal, will detail how you're going to make best use of the results of the project in terms of exploitation. And as you know, reading Horizon 2020, the rule has been that exploitation had to be performed after 4 years after the project. So this is something that, again, is already happening now. Exploitation will not close by the end of the project. How we are going to monitor that, hopefully if we will have a Clean Aviation 2, we will be able to do that. That's my frank answer. Otherwise, I think, again, what I can confirm is that at any point in time, JU or Commission may come to you and ask, how is the status of your exploitation on a Clean Aviation funded project? Also, after a certain number of years after the project end.
The two next questions are more political, so I will direct them to Jeanne. The first one is, unless there are specific rules for funding rate, being all the topics labeled innovative action, SMEs will not receive a 100%, will not be granted with 100% funding rate. Don't you think this will be a serious barrier for SMEs to embark in the program in terms of financial affordability?
Well, I don't know what to say, because I think, SMEs are also private companies, which also, should also engage in some risk activities. So I think, I think that's the rules, and I hope, there will be enough interest for them also in learning, in being part of a bigger consortium, and bring all this impact, maybe innovative thing that they can also, I think, place in the consortium and have have their place here in the big consortium. Yes.
Maybe what we can complement is to refer to the Clean Sky 2 figures through the call for proposals that have been opened in Clean Sky 2. We have noticed that we have 40% of SMEs having participated with a funding rate of 70%. So as such, this was not considered as being a limiting factor. And as you said, if well integrated within the different consortia, it should not be an entry barrier for SME participation. The second interesting question is, why such a low number of projects funded?
Well, I guess the answer is quite easy. I mean, because of course we want to be focused, to have impact. So we are not looking at having a lot of small projects and pleasing everybody. We are looking at impact, being focused, and of course then we have to reduce the number of projects, to have bigger projects, to really test, demonstrate, to really to have impact, to have something in a quick time frame which is ready for aircraft, to be taken on board of an aircraft.
And this creates a higher level of expectation at the end of projects.
Yeah.
That's why the impact monitoring strategy is of paramount, to make sure that we'll implement the adequate approach, the proper we'll have the proper implementation of projects in order to deliver the expected impacts. Otherwise, we may be forced to either reduce some activities in certain areas if they are not delivering as expected. And Ron, yes?
Yeah, and maybe being a little bit provocative in that sense, of course, the approach that you could decide to take, which is identified that there's something there for everyone in terms of a much more diversified, stratified approach. We already, I would say, with now 13 topics excluding the CSA, a smaller number of topics for the second call, and then phase 2 probably, again, converging towards a narrower set of areas where we really need to accelerate. Even now, we imagine that there will be a number of projects roughly in the low 20s. Having a unified program approach across those 20 is going to be a significant challenge for all of you and for all of us. If that number had been 200 projects instead of 20, I think that would have been a mission impossible in terms of actually creating what we want, the outcome we want in terms of actually having aircraft flying in 2035 with this technology on board and with this level of performance.
There is another question which is quite interesting and more or less in relation with what we have just discussed. Is can a consortium only address a topic partially and may the part not covered by, in the topic be outsourced via a call for tender?
Strange question.
But the topic description is there, indicating a number of requirements. So the proposal has to meet in full the topic description. This is why, as Sebastian and Ron said, the evaluation will place a lot of importance on analyzing what is the level of requirements, expertise, competencies brought by the consortia in order to meet those requirements. Now, if the question is about can I subcontract some core research work, the answer, looking at Horizon Europe approach, is no. Intensive research, core research, normally is not allowed for subcontracting. Having said that, in aeronautics field, we have some specific approaches that we have been considering in Clean Sky 1 and Clean Sky 2. So I would say that it's a tricky issue that normally comes up during evaluation, but normally we try to follow a very standardized Horizon Europe approach here. And again, if there is core research activities proposed for subcontracting, this is not allowed by the rules. What is allowed is to have a case-by-case analysis where there is a clear technical rationale, proposing a certain level of activity to be subcontracting. Specific service providers, we have specific case, for instance, for wind tunnel service providers. But again, the list is very limited. So be careful when preparing your proposals. The consortia needs to cover the key requirements.
And discriminate where the know-how is being generated versus where a service is being provided. I think that's a key message that is coming from Bruno in that sense.
Maybe just to open up more on this point, what we have noticed in Clean Sky 1 and Clean Sky 2 is that SMEs are often involved downstream the activities to support the demonstration. Which means, in fact, this will not be the core research activities, but this will be an important activities for SMEs and for parties as well to involve such a party. So what can be envisaged either in your proposal is that if you are not fully sure right now about the type of participants you may require in 2 years, 3 years at the time you will start the demonstration of certain activities, you can also provision a small portion of the funding, which is not necessarily big, for future subcontracted tasks and activities to be launched, where you might also open up the circle of participants to SMEs and parties which might be required at that time. This is also an important aspect to open up the participation. And for what concerns whether topics are to be covered in full, yes, they are to be covered in full. Nevertheless, there is a specificity in clean aviation where there are topics which call for more than one project. The ones which are calling for more than one project have clearly indicated sometimes whether they need to be fully covered or whether they only need to address partially part of the topic, since in fact there are 2 parts which are expected through different channels. So the answer is in between. To be covered in full for topics which are calling for only one project, yes. For the one which are calling for more than one project, no, they don't have to be covered in full because of the different nature of tasks and activities in each of these topics. Another question is about the gender balance. Do participant organizations need to have a publicly available gender plan in place prior to contract signing, as in mainstream Horizon Europe program?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
So I would say the gender balance is one of the criteria, as I
So,
mentioned
yeah.
before. This is the third one in case of equal proposals. You have to identify as much as you can what will be the gender balance within the project. And you don't have to make this public. This should be part of your proposal as much as you can. And this can be used during the evaluation in case it would be needed. Another question which relates to the indicative funding. What is the indicative funding of proposal, and does this relate to the indicative topic funding in case several projects are expected? Can the proposal exceed the indicative budget for the topic? What I've tried to explain in my presentation is that the indicative funding per proposal is an indicative funding value, which means it can be exceeded or it can be lower than the proposed funding. It will be an important element as well during the evaluation, because the evaluators will look at what we call the value for money, and will also be invited, in case of exceedance of that indicative funding value, to assess whether the budget which is being proposed is deemed necessary, and whether, in case of exceedance, we could envisage potentially synergies or link with other projects in case the topic calls for more than one project. This will be a way to make sure that we'll be capable to ensure a consistent portfolio project approach, because our objective is to make sure that we can address the full ambition of this call in case of funding exceedance, to be able to implement the right synergies and the right approach to balance and maintain as much as we can within the funding envelope of each topics, and to encourage linkage of projects and synergies in order to cover all the different aspects of the work program as being proposed. Okay? Will the transversal topic give higher priority to regional aircraft or to short, medium-range aircraft?
No. In the interest of time.
Indeed, each topics have the same importance, and as I've just said before, our objective is to make sure that we are capable to maximize the portfolio of projects addressing all topics as described and addressed in the work program.
And maybe if I can complement that, because that question has also come around more informally. There is one transverse topic, but I think we have seen, in reality, looking at the, let's say, the air transport system, the dawn of regional jets, the kind of, I think, now a certain sense of new turboprop configurations emerging. The boundary between one and the other is a little bit fuzzy, and we want to leave it to the community to define where those points are on the spectrum that are the best in terms of serving the market.
Another question is about analyzing the work program and the rules for submission. We understand it is possible to apply for different topics. So the same entity, can the same entity apply to different topics and as part of various clusters? So what I understand is that they are willing to know whether they can be part of different consortia preparing proposals against the same topic and within the same thrust. Is there any limitation or restriction? Bruno, maybe?
No, there is no restriction. All funding is open in play. We are not trying to segment budget ex ante. So open competition is there. Topics have been designed in a way as to be open and competitive, and good luck with your proposals.
The next one is more practical, is how to submit my proposal. You've mentioned there is a part A and a part B and annexes. What are these annexes? Are these compulsory? So yes, those annexes are compulsory. What are they? They will be issued soon, in fact, on the portal participants, together with the cooperation and the consortium agreements. And they are about the way to prepare your proposal, to define the different legal entities. This is the part A. To identify as well how the applicants or the consortia will address the different aspects of the topics against the criteria excellence, impact, and implementation. And all other sub-criteria. So you will be granted soon with that details and information, and we hope by mid next week all information will be made available. What kind of additional legal agreements a selected consortium of applicants can be asked to join and to sign beside a grant agreement?
Yes, consortium agreement has already been mentioned. This is a condition to sign up the grant agreement from our side. And within 6 months from the start of the project, you will have to engage also on a cooperation agreement. This is in order to, as I said before, allow the proper exchange of information, data, and a mutual access right regime in order to integrate results coming from different projects. So we are designing these agreements. I'm not in a position yet to tell you whether this is going to be organized on a trust level, across trusts. What we want to do is to allow that exchange of information to be as extensive as possible in the interest of impacts. But of course, we also understand we need also, I would say, to consider the specificities of the topics, the specificity also of the research area. But yes, this is a mandatory requirement. Cooperation agreement, milestone, 6 months from start of your project.
And in fact, your answer, Bruno, is in relation with the next question, which what does it mean that KGU actions will be connected? What is the cooperation agreement and what are the IPR implications? So I think you have already explained, we'll have 2 types of agreements. One is about the consortium agreement, which will be the agreement that will be put in place at project level. And then we'll have the collaboration agreement that will define how the different projects will be interconnected. This is very important in the application that every consortia identify in their projects which topics are contributing to their activities. And they already mentioned the type of the relation, the alignment, and the nature of interfaces which are expected. And this will be further detailed during the first 6 months of the project implementation.
Maybe just a piece of reassurance. There is, of course, duty of care here to be taken into consideration. Legitimate interests of all your stakeholders participating to our projects. There will be no deviation from the classic Horizon Europe rules. So each owner of its results and IP, where appropriate, will be always entitled to keep full control of its IP. So there is absolutely no intention to go beyond that. What is really needed is to allow this programmatic and this connected approach. If we don't do that, we are not a program. As simple as that. We are just a fragmented program, of projects, running without, necessary integration. And as JU, I think this is really an important step forward in order to ensure, that there will be this, integration of results. Again, in the interest of impact, in the interest of being able to respond to European legislator and confirm that we have structuring a program in a way as to deliver results.
Ron?
Yeah, and maybe just to emphasize the point that Bruno is making, this does not deviate from IPR in that sense, from protection of intellectual property, but it's needed for a programmatic approach. The 6-month horizon is important in terms of establishing the practical arrangements, but we encourage you in the preparation of proposals to already to look at where interfaces are and what those interfaces would require. Developing a wing for an aircraft the wing's likely to be attached to a fuselage. So we can imagine an interface being there. An engine is going to be either on wing or on fuselage. So there are bound to be physical interfaces, and we think the proposal stage is a good stage to already identify what you expect as a consortium and what you believe you need from another consortium or would transfer in terms of the overall aircraft ownership. The aircraft ownership level, and this will emerge from the transverse topic, is where we see a lot of the coordination taking place, and the impact monitoring and measurement also towards our objectives set in the regulation and in the SRIAP will be at the level of aircraft integration. So, and you need to see it in that context. We need to be able to predict what aircraft performance will be, and not 2% of one particular system looked at only in isolation without the consequences of that system being integrated in the aircraft, including a weight penalty or including some other kind of physical effect.
I propose to pause for what concerns questions from the participants on remote and to turn to questions into the audience here in Brussels. So I can see one question at the end.
Manor Boubaker from Collins Aerospace. I know the question was asked, but I would like to put it in a more concrete fashion in terms of UK participation. If we take the scenario of a proposal of a 10 million kind of call or expected contribution for a proposal, and you have, let's say, 1 million UK partners part. my understanding is 1 million for the UK, 9 million for the EU partners. And that 1 million from the UK can only go to the UK if they sign before the signature of the associated membership. And that's happening before the grant agreement. Otherwise, that 1 million will be set aside to be reused. And the UK partners need to figure out where to get that money from, which my understanding, the UK already signed an extension to the safe net, as they call it, to cover that type of money. Can you please just get that clear? Because there's I had a lot of discussions the last few days, and I would like to close on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's right. I mean, the 1 million will be considered until the signature of the grant agreement, like part of this budget. But if at the date of the signature of the grant agreement, the UK is not associated member, as you said, we will just give 9 million euros for the project. And what will happen with this 1 million, I think, is a little bit more. But of course, we will try to keep it for the program and we'll keep for the program and probably for future calls. So yeah, it's like it will be like this, yes. That and if UK is associated by the signature of the grant agreement, so no problem, the 1 million euro can be paid to the UK entity. That's like this, yes.
Is clarified? Good. Any other question? Just in front, and then we'll have other in the middle.
Okay, I have 20 questions, but I try to do the two most.
Put them together.
One is just for Joe, but because I understood that the document is not yet available in the full set in the Commission portal, why you set the deadline on the 23rd of June instead of the date in which 3 months after the publication?
There is a very simple reason. We need to start the program. So now everything is out, the rule for submission, the call topic, the work program. So what is missing, it's a matter of days because of recent adoption only last week of the full set of documentation. And we would have two options, either to wait for everything being final, but we would have postponed the call, as a consequence, postponed the start. And when I look at your individual agendas to finalize phase 1 by 25, in order to accelerate the maturation of demonstrator to be ready, we have considered collectively, including the members, that it would be better to start and accelerate. Because like any other GUs, we are all in the same phase. Since we need to accelerate, we try to mitigate the risk and to make sure that the additional delays required to provide the remaining documentation within the next 10 days is not at all a blocking factor to keep developing and to give visibility to everyone.
Yeah. So it's also not exceptional. It's something we see very regularly, and even the Clean Hydrogen Hall call has this, which has been open for, I think, over a month now.
And European Rail as well.
But we understand, of course, that the sooner things can be made available,
you imagine that in our community there is different knowledge of what is ongoing, and of course, second question is about the SME. I understood that if you find two proposals that have the same scoring, the fact that some SME is involved could create a differentiator between the two. You don't envisage any mechanism similar to the EDF in which the participation of SME allows some premium for the consortium in terms of extra funding or whatever? You know that in EDF there is such kind of, because you understand how complex could be to have a large number of SME involved in our proposal, how sensitive is the topic inside our community.
I think there's no, I think it was just if two proposals have the same score, but it's not part of the score in the first place.
It's a tie break at the moment. Impact being the first tie break, and the second tie break would be newcomers, SMEs. These things are determined per work program. I'm sure Bruno would love to do a dissertation in that sense, because every 2 years, of course, we will launch a new work program and we will amend from time to time. We will see the community growing, and I think it is also reasonable to state that once we've gone through the first call and we know which consortia are brought to the governing board in terms of the approval for the decision to fund, we will then start to look at call number 2. Call 2 is going to be smaller than call 1. And then towards phase 2, we're going to again see a rather large start, peak, and smaller. But throughout the life of the program, I think it is reasonable to say we're going to be looking at the coverage of the community and the capabilities required. We'll take measures if and when deemed necessary.
I think there were another question in the middle.
Yeah, Gary Way, Rolls-Royce. You'll be pleased to know it is not a UK question. But it is 3 questions. Let me know, Sebastian, if there are other people who've had their hands up as well. But the first question is a simple one about the application form. As you said, for the Part B, it is now up to 120 pages. So if we look at the existing innovation action form, within it, the template gives a breakdown of the 3 sections and then a sort of further breakdown in terms of guidance on page numbers, etc. Do you expect that sort of guidance to be adapted for the 120?
It's exactly the point, in fact. We departed from the Horizon Europe template for what concerns innovative actions, which call more or less for proposal up to 30 pages. In our case, we extended up to 100 pages. And then what we have done is that we have considered the sub-criteria which are currently proposed in the work program against excellence, impact, and implementation. And for each of the sub-criteria, we have divided, in fact, the proposal template with a section with clear guidelines to inform and guide applicants to know exactly what is expected, and also the way the evaluators will be instructed, because the same kind of information will be shared afterwards with the evaluators, and also you will receive at that time the score fiche that will be used for evaluators to assess the proposals.
So take note, it's sub-criteria. So not only the criteria,
the
but
sub-criteria.
indeed guidance in terms of how to, let's say, the balance in terms of attention going to the sub-criteria, but also how the experts will be advised to evaluate and come to a score, for instance, on excellence, but based on sub-criteria. So absolute transparency in that sense.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Second question is in terms of, let's say, a given call topic, a number of outcomes that are required, and how those outcomes need to be addressed, and the potential connection with other funding support that may come from national or regional programs. So, let's say it's got 10 outcomes. Can 2, 3, 4, I'm not too worried about specific numbers, but can some of those other outcomes be fully covered by work that is going on in another program elsewhere? And there is kind of sufficient evidence which is put into the proposal to say these particular outcomes are covered in these other places.
I'll take it first, but I think both Sebastian and Bruno would also perhaps choose to contribute. We want to have the impact, and we want to see the applicants engaging not only in terms of their proposal towards the joint undertaking and the evaluators that are going to be assessing it, but bringing along what is being done in parallel and making the most of those synergies. So I think in a general philosophical sense, nobody wants to see duplication. Nobody wants to go backwards in terms of a TRL step or an area, and we would warmly encourage this. Now, I think I'll stop there in terms of shooting myself in the foot in terms of specific guidance. I think the essence should be, the spirit should be, capturing the core of the topic in terms of where we want to go in terms of the performance level. But be prepared, because I think it can only be to your advantage to be specific in terms of what things are being done, have been done, or are being done that give you a launch pad, or that give you that ability to accelerate and to leverage.
Okay, thank you. Final question about exploitation obligations, up to 10 years. Does that obligation apply to the consortia as a whole to continuously monitor for the 10 years, or is it an individual beneficiary's obligation?
Yeah, it is a consortium obligation on a first instance, but it applies, as you know, to all the beneficiaries of the consortium. So at any point in time, we may approach the consortium coordinator and request what is the status of your exploitation strategy, even after the end of the project. This is done normally in Horizon Europe. It has been done in Horizon 2020 with kind of ex post reporting on the projects. So we may do something similar. And I can give you an example. We still see some kind of uptake of results from Clean Sky 1 now. So you see, the lifespan actually is pretty long. So don't get too surprised about the 10 years, because actually we see already now concrete examples about that.
Yeah, I think that's fine in terms of, as you say, concrete examples, because that is the nature of many participants to continue to build on what is done. I guess it's just the housekeeping obligation that in year 9, a particular entity knows what another particular entity has still been done. And as you said, maybe Clean Aviation 2 would be a help for that. Thank you very much.
I see another person.
Hello, Marios Patinios from BKI. Could you please clarify the funding eligibility for non-profit organizations such as universities, research organizations in the context of a consortium?
We follow Horizon Europe rules. So non-profit public entities can get funded up to 100%, also in the innovation actions. Same approach as Horizon Europe, so we do not deviate.
So you mentioned innovation actions. Are there going to be other types of actions that are not eligible to 100%? I have in my mind the EDF eligibility structure.
No. We apply innovation action to all the first call, and again, under the innovation action, public non-profit may apply for up to 100%. Whether in the future there will be topics marked as RIA, research and innovation, I mean, we can, at the moment, I would not see the condition, because we need to move, I would say, up in terms of TRL.
Yeah, normally we would go forward in TRL, but one very small footnote, that is we have a CSA in this call, which is a different mechanism, but that's a very minor footnote compared to looking at the volume of the call. It's 0.1%, I think, of the call, if I've calculated correctly.
Okay. And my last question. So it seems like the call is structured in such a way that, well, it's clear that the consortium needs to be built, and the leaders of these consortia are, it seems to be that they have to be big OEMs. What are the incentives that were included in the program to kind of incentivize the big OEMs to include universities and non-profit organizations?
I would say it's a matter of capabilities, skills, and expertise. We consider that big OEMs does not have the full capabilities to address all the aspects of the topics. And by nature, this is in interest, as they have done in the past, all along the different experience they acquired in that field, to involve universities, to involve academia, to involve RTOs in the various fields, from simulation, wind tunnel test, assessment, building demonstrators, and so on and so forth. And the same SMEs, like I said before. We have noticed in the past that as it comes to downstream activities, as it comes to building demonstrators, as it comes to performing some tests, the nature of the participants is different. And in that large industry as well, when you look at large OEMs, they do not do all by themselves. They have a large portfolio of suppliers, of subcontractors, and the same will happen in the context of the Clean Aviation Program.
The evidence of Clean Sky and Clean Sky 2, I think, also should give rise to feel, a certain sense of confidence in this, in how the ecosystem works and how RTOs, generally speaking, have these arrangements with the manufacturers, the integrators, the tier ones, and of course the academic base as well.
We still have other questions in the room. Otherwise, I continue. If not other questions, so.
There is a question. The back.
Sorry. Okay.
Crane. We've heard a lot about the EU, but there's been no mention of Switzerland, and I noticed it wasn't on the associated members list. Could you update us on the current status?
I can do that. Yes, I mean, Switzerland is not associated. Well, you know, it's a broader political issue because we have this institutional agreement that is not signed yet. So, yeah, it's like a third country without, any funding, yeah, basically.
And there's no timescale.
No what?
Timescale.
Timescale.
No.
On the negotiations.
I was dealing with that in my previous job, and I think, well, the UK, I don't want to speculate, but Switzerland, I can say, well, I don't think there will be anything by the end of the year.
Thank you.
To complement, Switzerland is a clear case when building your proposal. If you want to include Swiss entities, you should already use the associated partner status, meaning zero funding. They participate without funding. They will bring own resources or national funding. And we have seen this already happening with Switzerland in Clean Sky 2. So that is, I think, something that we may advise already. Take the associated partner status in the model grant agreements. Not signing the grants, but nevertheless, they will be bound to a number of contractual provisions in terms of performance, in terms of carrying out the activities within the consortia. They will have to sign up to the consortium agreements, and funding needs to be clear from day one. Funding will come through alternative sources. This is where we have probably in the dilemma of Switzerland negotiation a little bit more of probably stability in advising our applicants.
I think
they
it's
should
not for tomorrow.
No, it's not for tomorrow.
There must happen something very special, and I don't see there's something very special happening.
Are there any other questions in the room? No? I have 8 others, so we still have more or less 20 minutes ahead of us before we close.
Seatbelt sign is still on.
It refers to the number of participants in a project. Will a consortium including around 20 partners be considered reasonable? I would say 10 partners, 15, 20, 30, 40 is more a matter of efficiency, expertise, objectives, delivering the impacts. As such, we haven't yet, we have not defined what should be the right number of participants in a consortium. So it's up to you.
There's also a very broad spectrum in terms of both funding, areas with 175 million of funding attached to a topic, albeit where we foresee more than one project, and other areas with 7. So we would imagine that a consortium for 7 million of funding is probably somewhat smaller than a consortium for 115 or 175.
I agree. So there is one on the consortium agreement, but I think it's quite straightforward because already addressed. Will the Clean Aviation Consortium Agreement be based on the Horizon Europe DESCA model consortium agreement?
Yes, it has been based on the DESCA model with a number of adaptations to Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking, yes, to reflect also very much the specificity of the program and of the first call.
Concerning relation with EASA, what kind of support can we expect from EASA? So, as mentioned repeatedly in various presentations, first of all, EASA is part of the Clean Aviation Governing Board. EASA is has an important role to play in terms of supporting the program in the route to exploitation, in the route to certification. There is one topic as well in the transversal area O2, which aims at investigating the digital, the twin models that can be used to certify and to anticipate certification issues. So EASA is also mentioned in the topic description where they are, I would not say required, but potentially may have an interest. EASA can be contacted by any parties. They will decide which topics they are willing to engage with because they have also limited resources. Nevertheless, EASA will play fair. In any topics where they consider they have an interest to participate, they will welcome any consortia for given topics where they have accepted to participate in another consortia to be involved in order to implement a fair treatment and a fair approach.
Yeah.
Yes, I can confirm we have even in the single basic act, it is stated that the EASA may provide technical advice in projects, following the request, of course, of the coordinators, our assessments, so it is possible. The way EASA will be, practically speaking, included into the proposal, we are looking at different options, so we will basically put on the table 2-3 different options that applicant may consider. What we've been using in Clean Sky 2 is to allow them to be part of the proposal as a third party providing their contribution to the project. So their technical contribution will have to be described in the proposal. But again, we will be proposing a couple of options. Also, we need to discuss those aspects directly with the EASA colleagues because they are a European Union, as you know, regulatory agency. So we need to consider also some specific, regulatory aspects. But yes, they can be part of the proposals where needed. And as Sebastian explained, it will depend also very much on the nature of the topic.
One question in the room as well, just in front. So if you can provide the mic on the second row.
Thank you. Yeah, regarding from Rodo Sekura from New Electric Aircraft Engines. Regarding the coal ultra-efficient propulsion systems, it requires to reduce the emissions. We target net zero emission, so both CO2 and non-CO2. Do you confirm that we are eligible for that call?
You individually, you mean? Who is eligible for this call?
A company that it proposed true net zero emission engines.
I would not say whether you are eligible or not. Just refer to the topic description, and if you consider that you have all necessary skills and expertise that you can bring to the topic, and you can apply, as said before, everyone is invited to participate and apply as long as you can provide the necessary contribution as requested in the topic.
You can exceed the target set in the topic. We don't mind.
You can do better.
There is another question about will non-members, can non-members declare IKC? So I think we have already addressed this. Non-members are not supposed to contribute to IKC. IKC is an obligation which arises in the regulation for members. Nevertheless, non-members willing to become a member in the near future, through the future call for expression of interest, can declare their intention to contribute, and as such, this can be assessed as being part of the IKC obligations for a given proposal. About the funding rate for non-profit entities, as we have said before, this is 70%. All is detailed in the work program.
Non-profit is 100%.
Sorry, my mistake. Non-profit entities, you are right, 100%. My mistake. And the last but not the least, before we close, there are 2 calls planned for phase 1 of Clean Aviation. How many calls can be expected for phase 2?
Shall I start? We currently foresee, you've seen this with the, I would say, phenomenally exciting call of 735 million. We currently foresee 2 calls over 2022 and 2023. This is also described in the work program. That would currently deplete what we expect to use for phase 1. Should, through, for instance, the association of other member states, additional funding be decided in the context of the flow of funding from new associations, should that lead to additional funding becoming available for clean aviation, we would consider a call in 2024. Currently, we can't consider that call if we expect, for the moment, to use everything that we have planned in terms of indicative funding. But by 2024, we should be well on our way to defining what is going to become phase 2. Normally, again, in the current setup, not taking into consideration, let's say, the potential for increase in funding, our next call would be in 2025, which would be the launch call, to be decided in 24 in terms of content, but in early 25, with which we would launch phase 2 of the program. What I can say is, I think in terms of expectation, we expect that also to be a relatively large call, and we would expect after that, again, in 2026, possibly also in 2027 to complement that. 2027 normally would be the final year in which we would launch calls over the 7-year multi-year financial framework.
This concludes that Q&A session. I hope that we have been able to provide all necessary details, clarification. We'll try to capture in writing all of the questions in order to include them in our first Q&A. I would like to thank you all, our speakers, our moderators, myself.
Yes,
and,
thank you.